Oh, hi. Welcome to Mora's epic 10-minute variety show. I'm, of course, Mora. Oh, the dress, yes. Allow me. This is the back. It has beads and sequins, my favorite things. Slit up the front. I don't know if you can see. As long as we're here together, I would really like you to take in the dress. It's vintage, of course. I mean, you can tell, can't you? They just don't make things like they used to. May I sit down? Thank you. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a play I wrote recently. It's called Jukebox. Jukebox takes place in a bar. It's a Monday. It's raining cats and dogs outside. And so people come in the bar at different times, and they have different stories, the way we do. Some of them are true, maybe not. We don't know, because we don't know them. We only hear what they have to say. And like in a bar, when a jukebox is playing, a song might have a certain mood. You know what I mean. But before you can sink into the mood, another song comes on. That's a little bit about what's going on in this play. Instead of songs, they're stories. But really, they're the same thing, aren't they? I want to tell you about Cora. Cora is married to a man that she hates because he's a pig. They're in their 40s. They're on their way to Niagara Falls. And it's just raining so hard, so they come in the bar, and there's nobody in there. Nobody seems to be working there. So they call out, and a girl named Andy comes out of the kitchen, and she's disheveled. She's shaking. She asks Cora's husband if he might tend bar, because the bartender inexplicably isn't there either. But she looks at Cora, and she sees something, and asks Cora to come into the kitchen if she would. So Cora goes in there, and people come in to the bar, and the husband makes them drinks, and he's having the time of his life. Well, you and I both know, because we've seen the play so far, that earlier the waitress, Andy, killed a man and dragged him into the kitchen. Cora and Andy are stuffing him into the walk-in cooler, I presume. I don't actually know because I haven't been in the kitchen, but I think that's what they're doing. Cora comes out of the kitchen and she's changed because she's actually done something. Andy stays in there. And again, as I just mentioned, I haven't been in the kitchen, but I think she's cutting up his body. So Cora waits on some tables, and of course her husband is barking orders at her. And so she tells a story. Would you like to hear it? Of course you do. This is Cora's story. Yes, cats and dogs. I don't know where that expression comes from, but it says everything. It was raining cats and dogs the day I was supposed to go to Tijuana. 16. I was going to ride on a motorcycle. Forbidden in my family, like everything except lipstick. My mother always said, don't go out without lipstick and a slip. I still adhere to that policy. Do you like the shade? I was 16 and scrawny, but I had a heart and a soul, and maybe that's what he sensed, a yearning for adventure. Johnny was 20, but I later learned he was actually 25. Johnny had had it with that town, he said. And I thought it strange because he had blown in with the wind only a few days before, like Mary Poppins, only on a motorcycle. We first met at the library. I think he was washing up in there or sleeping or something. Just there he was behind the science fiction section. Hair wet and combed back. You know the look. The t-shirt. Like a million other boys. But this one looked at me. And he said, "I'm looking for a book." And I said, "We have lots of books here." Like I worked there or something. "What do you recommend?" Johnny asked. And he said, "I'm looking for a book about love gone wrong." So I showed him Romeo and Juliet. What went wrong, he wanted to know. And I had to think about it. "They didn't get out of town fast enough," I said. And he liked that. So I quickly got a job volunteering at the library. And they asked if I would be willing to lock up, and I said, gladly. So it worked out that Johnny would hang around, and then I'd lock up, and then we'd make out in the children's section because of all the pillows. "Story time," he'd say, and off we'd go. My parents were very proud of me because of that job. There was a radio in the employee bathroom, and we could get stations from the city, rock and roll and pop. Johnny would say, "There are two broken hearts in every song, the singing heart and the listening heart." I asked him, "What if it's a happy song?" And he said, "Happy hearts don't write songs, and happy hearts don't listen to songs." I don't know if it's true, but every song for me was written by Johnny, and that makes me the listening heart. After a few weeks, he said it was time to get out of town fast. What did I think of Tijuana? I thought Tijuana sounded grand. He asked if I'd ever been on a motorcycle, and I lied, and I said yes, worrying that it might disqualify me or something if I said no. Johnny told me to wear all black and leather if I had it. I didn't have it, but I managed to get hold of a black leather jacket. I bought it with my mother's checkbook, figuring she'd never catch me because I would be in Tijuana. We were supposed to meet at the library before dawn, so I got up at 3 o'clock, just in case the sun rose early, and sneaked over there. I took off my shoes, and I hid in the bushes. I hid in the bushes until noon, and Johnny never came. I went into the library finally thinking he would come and find me, but he didn't. I stayed after locking up and peered out the window and waited and waited and waited until the police came and my father came and the neighbors came and the head librarian came. I think my high school principal came. After they unlocked the door, I pretended to be in a catatonic state so I wouldn't have to answer any questions. As they carried me out, my mother was shouting at me, "What do you mean going into my checkbook?" So there you go about getting out of town fast. I stayed in the catatonic state for about a month and then realized I'd be stuck in that town and maybe a hospital if I didn't snap out of it. So one morning I got up and acted like nothing happened, like I had amnesia and thought it was a month ago. A couple years later, I was working at the local paper and the editor wanted me to look something up in the archives, and I came across an obituary. It was Johnny. At least I think it was Johnny. There was no picture. He died the day we were supposed to go to Tijuana, crashed his motorcycle. His ID said his name was Philip Santiago, spelled with an F. He must have hated that name to call himself Johnny. No one told me, no one mentioned it. There was no connection, or I thought. Then I remembered something my mother said when I was in a catatonic state. She and my father would put their heads together and whisper, but I heard this. She said, what was he doing with a copy of Romeo and Juliet is a mystery. I've learned something. There is no such thing as coincidence. Eventually, all the dots make a shape, and the shape becomes the landscape of your life. You get asked only a couple of important questions, and you're too bog-headed to know their importance. But you always know the answer, even if you don't say it. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for listening to Cora's story. And I will see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. I hope your heart is full and light. But I also hope that you have a listening heart. Good night.